Our veterans need your support. Foxfield Farm for a Recovery Mission is a not-for-profit organization that has been established to provide an equestrian groundwork training program for U.S. veterans with PTSD and related issues incurred through military service. This curriculum will be offered at absolutely no cost to any veteran participating in the program. This foundation will also incorporate the repurposing of rescue horses and locating new, responsible owners. The synergy of the work invested by the veterans to aid the recovery of these horses is equitably therapeutic. Please go to our website to be a supporter, www.foxfieldrecoverymission.org. Thank you. Hello, and thank you for joining me again today. Once again, I would like to thank the Connecticut Historical Society for their ongoing support to Connecticut Valley Views for this beautiful venue to welcome our guests today. And they are Oz Griebel. He's the former leader of the Metro Hartford Alliance, also known as Hartford's Chamber of Commerce, and former registered Republican, and running as a candidate for governor under the Griebel-Frank party line.
Correct.
Monte Frank, a lawyer.
How are you?
Yes, nice to see you here, Monte. It's nice to have the two of you together. It's a pleasure. And he is a former Democrat and a past president of the Connecticut Bar, and he is an advocate for gun violence prevention. So Oz, a brief overview. Where are you in your campaign? What's the status? What have you been doing? Well,
since we talked last, we obviously secured the signatures that we needed to get on the ballot, so we just want to acknowledge the great group of volunteers who made that a reality.
Yes.
We collected well over 10,000 and to get to the 7,500 verified signatures. So that's been a big part of the last 8 months to get us moving forward. At the same time, we've spent significant time meeting with businesses, meeting with other employers, meeting at homes, meeting at church groups and civic associations to make sure people know who we are, why we're running as independents, what some of our key principles are, what some of our key objectives are. And now that the primaries are over and we're on the ballot, obviously the focus, we're kind of in a sprint right now from Labor Day a week or so ago to Election Day, and there's just more and more of the same. So it's been a pretty constant build-up to that point, and the opportunities like this are really very, very valuable to us, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your listeners.
Well, I think what's important here is that people are so used to the two-party system.
Right.
And then when they see an unaffiliated or people also known independent.
Right.
What is the reaction when you talk to the people? Are they aware of the fact you're running? Do they know what it means and why you're doing it?
Oh, no, I think that's the great appeal. I mean, the idea of being able to go talk to a business, whoever we're talking to, an interview like this, making sure that people do understand Monte and I are running as an independent ticket, not as the endorsed party candidates of the independent party, and we can talk about that later. But we are running, and our point is that only the two-party system is fundamentally broken. There's been no net job growth in the state in 30 years. As a result, we've had more taxes, more fees, and increased rates on existing taxes and fees. We have an out-migration of talented people of all economic levels, and we're in a mess. And so when you talk, we're here to talk honestly about the issues, and they are significant. We're also here to talk honestly about the asset base in Connecticut, which remains significant.
The positive side.
The very positive side. Right. I mean, we wouldn't be running if we didn't believe in the future of this state. We're a glass half full ticket, if you will. And but there's significant impediments to returning Connecticut to preeminence, which is where we want to be.
Yeah, you need to face up to it. I'm going to quote here. You said on your website, polarized politics makes it almost impossible. That's what you're talking about, this conundrum.
Correct.
For well-intentioned people to come together for the good of the state on critical economic and social issues. We are an independent choice that puts the welfare of all Connecticut citizens above a political party. I really think that's the crux of it.
It is. There's no question.
There's
So our tagline, no parties, no politics, just solutions, is the short elevator speech, but that is exactly what we're about.
Exactly.
And when we're out there talking to voters,
yes,
I mean, the voters are smart.
Yes.
They understand that Connecticut is facing serious problems. And when you look at the party leadership, they're all interested in making sure that Connecticut stays red or it stays blue.
Right.
But the people are interested in turning Connecticut into a red, white, and blue state, where we the people have a voice in what occurs, and that our interests are the focus of government.
Well, you know, Monte, that's a good point. And I think in many ways, you talk about making lemonade out of lemons. The fact that we've gotten to such a critical point has made people more critically aware. If everything were kind of going along okay and everybody was, they get apathetic about things.
Right.
And they go, okay, let's see, I'm a Republican, I guess I'll vote for the Republican guy.
Right.
They're not paying attention. It has gotten so critical. It's a little like having something bothers you and something bothers you, but it gets to a point where you finally have to go to the emergency room. I think we're in the emergency room at the moment. And I think that that's a very valid point, and people are listening. And I think they are parsing all the things that are being said, and they're comparing all the things that are being said, which brings me to a point. I wish you were going to be in the next debate. But you're going to be doing,
Well, by the time your viewers see this, we may have been in the debate.
Yes,
and that is who we are. We've had I'll go back to the volunteers for a second. We've had a great group of people working for us from the beginning. I think we have 5 or 6 people on a paid staff. The bulk of the folks working for us every day have volunteered their time. And when people volunteer and they buy into something, we've had over 500 people sign a petition to go into both the Day and WTNH. We've had about 100 of those, a couple hundred of those independently send additional emails in.
Yes.
We'll have people down at the Guard Theater on Wednesday.
That's
if
wonderful.
We're not. So, I mean, the energy, to the point you just questioned to ask Mike, the energy is there. It's building. And that's what makes it exciting and why we're confident we're going to win on the
And volunteers drove our petition.
Absolutely.
This was not an operation where we imported people from out of state to run the petition drive. We had everyday people out there at stop-in shops at fairs. And,
the catalyst was the people, not you.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the point there, too, is that shows you how you would run the government.
Absolutely.
You are not going to put up with what has been the old way of doing things. You're going to do them to get them done for the people.
We can't afford it.
No, the people can't afford it.
And the idea that what we've said is that only an independent governor can bring both parties together and bring private sector leadership in. And that we can't have government running in one silo, business community in another silo, hospitals in another silo, higher education in another silo. We're a very small state.
Yes.
We really do have to work together much more collaboratively. Our biggest asset are the smart people in this state, smart people who care about the state of Connecticut. And a governor and a lieutenant governor have to provide the leadership to bring those people together. That is how we're going to not only market our assets, strengthen our assets, but also deal with these very significant
impediments. But that shows you two came together. You were in opposite parties, and you two came together.
Because most people are in the middle, Susan. I think what we've said is, we're different parties. And there's certain dogmas and philosophies that may motivate us a little bit right of center or left of center. But our phrase is most of us live in the radical middle. That's where most of us live. And what people care about is not whether it says R or D on your sweatshirt. It's, is government providing...
Should be P for the people.
Exactly. But they want a government that they know when they're paying their taxes. I don't think any of us mind paying taxes as long as we know what we're getting for them in return.
Exactly.
Is better education system for kids, transportation system that moves people around. It's something that moves the state forward.
Return on investment.
Correct. For everybody, not for one constituency.
And what I really appreciate about this team, Oz and I both come from an athletic background.
Yes. What did you do? What did you do?
Oz,
you played
Oz
baseball.
Played baseball.
Yeah, I played. Yeah.
And you're a bicycle.
I've been on a couple of U.S. teams in cycling. Have raced throughout the United States and internationally. And it's all about, you have a leader, but it's all about teamwork. It's about getting your person across the line first.
And I played polo, and I have teamwork with my horse. So
Exactly.
we all understand what's going on here.
I played baseball, was in the College World Series, played a year in the minor leagues in the Cardinal system. and afterwards coached.
Yes.
And so, what I really appreciate from athletic background and building teams throughout my career is the way Oz has built up this team.
Yes.
It consists of
So
Democrats, Republicans, people from different backgrounds, people from have different expertise.
Yes.
And we sit around a room and we talk about issues.
Yes.
And we come to a resolution about what will propel the state forward, what will allow us to create 200,000 new net jobs over the next 8 years. Because our view is, and I think most people we talk to agree, that's the way we're going to solve this problem, is by growing our way out of this mess.
And the fact we're a small state, you should be able to wrap your arms around it. I mean, we have got the assets. You talk about assets. We have got a lot of good things going for us, and I think they've been tossed aside or overlooked or overwhelmed maybe by the challenges.
Taken for granted. I mean, one of the things we've said is that the employer community, I believe, in the 30 years, particularly in the last 20, I think has been taken for granted. That people will say to me, well, UTC's been here forever, they're always going to be here, right? Really? Take a look at where the jobs are today. And if you're not talking to employers and expressing appreciation for them, expressing appreciation for the fact that they're have hired people here, that they're paying taxes, that they're investing in their facilities and their R&D and their equipment. If you're not thanking people for that, it's easy because you've got 49 other governors that are knocking on everybody's door saying, hey, come to South Carolina, come to Florida, come to Texas. If you don't see yourself in competition, then you're going to get, and it's I think it's really happened to us. So we create tax policies that are inimical to greater growth. That's the kind of thing that we have to change. We didn't get into this fiscal mess in 10 minutes, and we're not going to get out in 10 minutes. No. But bringing people together is really critical.
Well, that's all part of your background. You worked with the businesses and Metro Hartford Alliance. That was kind of your main forte focus, wasn't it?
Right. Yep.
So I think you understand that part, and you've been able to, over the past few months and all the time that you've been working together, have grasped what the people need too.
Right.
I mean, there's the business and then there's the private sector, and we kind of look at voters as the private sector, and I think you're reaching out to them.
But that's a major difference between this ticket and our competitors. Oz and I have significant experience in Connecticut, working with Connecticut businesses, working with municipalities, working with the nonprofits in driving the people's agenda forward. If you look at Oz's resume, I mean, it is far superior than the resumes of the other two candidates. And if the people are hiring somebody for a job and based on a resume, they call one person back for an interview. And that would be Oz, in that he's been on the board of Yale New Haven Hospital. He's been chairman of the board of CBIA. He's been on the board and still on the board of organizations for the arts, including the Bushnell. His background on the Metro Hartford Alliance is significant in bringing the private sector together with the public sector to grow jobs and to create a quality of life in this region that is what we deserve and what many of us had when we first moved here.
Yeah, and in all fairness, the other people have been in businesses. They're business people, but you've been in the business of business.
Well, the other thing I'd say, Susan, to build off of Monte's comments, what we like to say is that Monte and I have not only lived and worked in this state for 25 years, we have worked for the state for 25 years. When you look at what Monte's experience has been in moving legislation forward in things like reducing incidents of gun violence, dealing with homelessness issues around veterans. This isn't just about profit. And the point I make across the board in all these things, you cannot run government like a business. Business principles can be applied, but you can't move a division to India. You can't decide that you're going to cut off unprofitable customers because you're not getting a sufficient ROI. That's not what government doesn't work for shareholders.
It can legislate to move things.
Correct, but it doesn't work for shareholders. Government works for taxpayers. It works for residents. It fills the void where the private sector can't avoid. The private sector is not going to build I-91.
Right.
The private sector is not on its own going to take care of those with mental health issues.
Right.
I mean, that's why we work together. That's the whole beauty of this country, that there's a sense of entrepreneurship. Free market is very important. That's what makes it. But it's also a sense of community, a sense of that we're all in this together. And that's something that Monte and I think, have demonstrated clearly in the last 20, each of us have demonstrated in the 25 years we've each lived in the state.
Well, the enthusiasm is there. Now, one of the things I want to ask, this is your second run for governor now.
Right.
And you ran as a Republican before. Is there anything different about the state of the state than it was before?
It's a huge difference. And I'd say I've looked very seriously at running as an independent in 2010. And in talking with a number of people, at the time, decided to run for the Republican nomination because I really didn't believe there'd be any meaningful traction for an independent. You mentioned a few minutes ago that we're in the emergency room.
Yes.
I don't think we were in the emergency room. I'm not even sure we were in the ambulance for most people. A lot of us could see this coming, but a lot of people were saying, well, you meant, hey, things are pretty well. The recession had hit, but it hadn't hit the same way with across the board with everybody. I think now, as I looked at this, when I decided last summer to do this, I knew that the only way I wanted to do this was an independent, and I wanted to come out. The other thing I'd say, it's liberating when you run as a candidate for convention votes to get on the primary ballot, and then on the primary, you got to do a lot of tacking to a narrow group to a relatively narrow group of voters. You're not talking to all 2.1 million registered voters. You're talking to a subset of that, and so being able to come into a home, being able to have this kind of a conversation openly and saying, we're going to tell you what we think. You may not agree with what we think, but we're going to tell you what we think.
Yeah, but I think people want that honest thing.
That's the point.
I really do. Just very quickly, just give me the catalyst moment that the two of you decided to, you called him, he called you, you happened to meet over coffee. What was
we had a
moment?
Mutual friend that got introduced. And I'll just give you the quick story. When I went into the Secretary of State's office last August to start the process, I was at the end of the conversation, the person I was talking with said, well, who's your running mate? And I said, well, I don't have a running mate. And she said,
but you have to have one.
As a petitioning candidate, you have to have one. So there were 2-3 of us in the room, and we walked out and said, how are we going to do this? And fortunately, a mutual friend of ours introduced us really not until mid-October and had an initial conversation. We knew, even in that initial 45 minutes or so we were together, knew we had something, and then spent several times talking through some things, making sure that we were...
And having a lawyer on your team is great.
Oh, yeah, no question. A litigator, you're not only a lawyer, but somebody who's a litigator
negotiator,
on it. Absolutely, exactly.
Mediator,
that's all really helpful.
However you want to...
It was kind of interesting. I got a call early Friday morning from our mutual friend and said, Oz wants to talk to you about potentially being his running mate. He was talking to a bunch of people.
Is that exciting? Was that like, wow?
After my jaw hit the floor, I thought it was exciting. My immediate reason, because I knew of Oz.
Yes.
Had never
met before.
Yep.
My immediate reaction was, well, doesn't Oz know that I'm a Democrat?
Yeah.
And I believe, and I went right down the list of red meat Democratic items. And the response is, that's exactly why he wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm interested. I'd like to talk. And we had a number of discussions, but it was a lot about what we're talking about today is about how can we bring people together and the frustration that politics have become so tribal and there's just so much bickering.
Yes.
And meanwhile, the state is getting into a worse and worse situation where people are refusing to work together. So, we looked at it and said, well, why is it that certain things have to fall into the Democratic bucket, but not in the Republican bucket? And certain Republicans...
It's got to fall into the people bucket.
Why can't we be both fiscally responsible and try to make our state safer?
Sure.
Why are those things mutually exclusive? Why can't we be for reducing the achievement gap in education and pushing an agenda that will restore our economy to preeminence?
Yeah. It's funny. I want to call you guys after the TV program. You're putting things in order, and he's bringing the law. So we've got law and order here going on. All right. Well, let's move on to something here. You two were on opposite sides of the fence, Republican, Democrat, and so forth. How have you come to parity on the future of the income tax?
Well, first of all, I even push back on that metaphor. I don't really think we were on either side of the fence.
I see, okay.
I really do believe, as I said earlier,
I'll stand
most of us... No, I don't mean to correct. I really do believe that we even use language that I think divides people.
Okay.
And the point is that most people in this state... there may be... look, there's only 22% of registered voters registered as ours.
Yes.
About 32 or 33% registered as Ds.
Correct.
42, 43, 44% are registered as unaffiliated voters.
Right.
Now, they're going to lean Democratic or Republican, but when you look at the numbers, it's not like this is to Monte's earlier point, this is a pretty close to a red, white, and blue state today.
Yes.
It's up to us to give voters real choice.
True.
That's what we're trying to get done. That's what we want to... That's what this ticket is all about. On the income tax, I've said this just quickly, and then we can go any direction you want. The personal income tax has to be part of the long-term revenue source of the state. It's $10.5 billion now. all taxes are regressive, but I would argue that a personal income tax is probably the least regressive of all taxes, because it depends on how much money you earn. It's not depending if you got to go buy a suit of clothes, and it doesn't make any difference whether you make $5 an hour or $105 an hour. That's where I think we got, or you put tolls in, or the gasoline tax. Everybody has to pay those, regardless of what their income is. And I think that part of this is getting to you've used the word parity. I think we also want to use the word equity. What's fair? And so the personal income tax to me is the right thing to do when it was put in place in '93. Do we need to get the rates readjusted? Absolutely. But most importantly, we need more people in the state paying taxes. Because if we don't get 200,000 more people paying taxes, preferably be at an average salary that's closer to $85,000 or $90,000 rather than $30,000 or $35,000, we aren't going to really generate the revenues other than by raising rates.
Well, we've got to keep all these talented young people that graduated from all our great universities, public and otherwise. And I think if you can retain them, but then, of course, you have to have the jobs. So it's a chicken and the egg. We've got to have the jobs to keep the people, and then we have to have the young people to fill the jobs. So, you know,
and we need to have vibrant cities.
Yes.
That's a piece of it that is missing, which means there needs to be, when we look at what our revenues are and what our priorities are, investing in our cities in a way that will produce a base for our young people to want to come is critical.
Well, we talked about the positive side of Connecticut. There are a lot of reasons to be here. One, you can get educated well here. There is a very good quality of life here in Connecticut. We always say this, it's going to be a bit trite between New York and Boston, but that's where we are. You're near the coast. You've got a lot of great physical people to exercise and have a good. We've got a lot of cultural museums here. We've got tons of stuff here we've got lots of great restaurants. We've got a lot of entertainment and things going on here. So there isn't any real reason why we can't make a plus out of those things.
Yeah, and on New York and Boston, by the way, just to emphasize that, that proximity, that on either end, is the single most important economic asset that we have. Our ability, as Monte just said, our ability to attract the businesses and the talent from those two metropolitan areas, given our proximity,
very true.
should be there. We're very competitive on commercial, notwithstanding the cost of doing business in the state and living in the state. This is still much more competitive for commercial real estate and residential real estate.
You can still make a lot of money and not have to spend as much as living in New York.
And you don't have congestion issues the same. We have congestion, but not like you have in the Boston, New York metropolitan area.
Exactly. Now, I want to go back to you, Monte. You said, this is from after one of your 100-mile rides, and you could tell us a little bit more about that. I want to make sure we fit in all of our questions. This is a great discussion. You said the two-party system is broken, period. Promise after promise, pandering to their bases. It's time we talk issues, and that's why we're in this race to bring sanity to the Capitol. Talk about that a little bit, Monte.
Look where we are.
Yeah.
You know, we've had no net new job growth in 30 years. That's the entire time that I've been in the state. And so, you know, it's forced the legislature to raise rates. As you raise rates, people leave. So now we've got an outward migration problem. We just touched on the fact that younger people are not wanting to come here. I have two daughters. They're not coming back to Connecticut, and it breaks my heart.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we now have a situation where we're starting to pit generations against generations.
Yes,
you know,
I would agree with you on that.
As the unfunded liability grows and it takes up more and more of our budget, we're going to have to make tough choices, which are not fair choices because, you know, we're pitting the pensioners against their grandchildren. And so, you know, if you look at the 30 years, you know, the Democrats and Republicans have spoiled our system. And so we're in a point now where we're going to have more of the same, or we're going to go in a new direction based on honesty, integrity, and experience, which is what us presents to the voters.
Yeah. Well, I think also, too, there's a point to be made. You talk about this generation, whether we call it a gap or a thing or bordering on civil war because you do have these generations of who's supporting who, and, you know, we have to stay here and pay for you because of, you know, you're creating this kind of an issue. The fact is there's also a political divide going on here, too, because a lot of the young people growing up are being trained, taught, whatever, wherever they're going to school, more liberal ideas, and the older generation sometimes are not there. So that you have all kinds of reasons to have these leaving the state.
There's a growing cynicism, I think, too, Susan, among younger people about, and it's not just at the state level. You've got this at the Social Security level, you've got it at the Medicare level. I mean, the mess that we're leaving anybody under the age of 50,
Yes.
I would put, is at risk here.
Yes.
And that's grossly unfair.
Yes.
One could say it's immoral, what we're doing, and we can't solve the national problem.
And we've got an aging population.
Absolutely
Yeah.
got an aging
Yep.
population. And then we're trying to drive young people out with some of our immigration issues, immigration policies. So
Exactly.
the notion of what I think Connecticut can be, and this is our aspiration, Connecticut should be preeminent in everything in this country. I don't care whether you're talking about healthcare, renewable energy, higher education, taking care of the achievement gap. This state is small enough
Yes.
that with the incredible talent we have here, if we're willing to work together, sustain collaboration, we can put Connecticut at the top of everything. You couldn't do it in Texas. Texas is too big.
Yes.
We couldn't run this campaign in
Right,
Texas.
right.
You probably even can't really do it in Massachusetts because even though it's not as big as Texas,
Yes.
it's a very different state once you get west of 495.
Right.
Yes, there are different pockets here. There's no question. Torrington's different than New London, and Stamford's different than Putnam. I get all that. But the state is small enough. One of our statements we've made is we will promise people that we will be out and about after inauguration. This isn't just going to Putnam or Torrington or New London or Stamford for the campaign. We'll have a concept of an office day a week, where we're out listening to people, getting them engaged. It's not, as I've said, we're campaigning today to win on November 6th. The kinds of changes that we're advocating, that campaign starts on November 7th. Because just because we're elected on November 6th
Yes.
doesn't mean
you sit
anything.
back and relax.
Well, the more importantly, you got a legislature. If you're not
Exactly.
willing to work with the
That's right.
legislature, you can't run. That's why you can't run government like a business. It's not like you can tell people, go do X, and they say yes or 3 bags full. That's
Yeah.
not what you have
No.
to do. You've got to work with the legislature.
Yeah.
You've got to work with leaders in business and healthcare. And that requires a lot of effort, a lot of perseverance, a lot
Yes.
of tenacity. But that's where Connecticut has got the size of this state should be one of our best assets.
Yes. Well, very quickly, Monte, just this last thing. As with a law background, how do you see you will be dealing with this litigation addressing the 2027 contracts and pensions?
Sure.
And so forth?
So I think it gives me a tremendous advantage that I can pull legal minds and bring them into our ticket. I mean, that's one of the things that we've been doing a lot of is we don't care if you're Democrat, Republican,
Yes.
unaffiliated. If you've got talent, you want to work hard, you've got a place on our team. I always view, yes, I try cases, I try commercial cases,
Yes.
I try cases for municipalities, but I always view that if I've got to go to a courtroom and litigate, I have not done 100% of my job, because mediation and dispute resolution and trying to find compromise is the way most pieces of litigation ought to end up, and most do. And that's critical. It was critical when I was Connecticut Bar President and all the other things I've done. It was trying to find common ground, bring people together to move legislation that is going to
And
help
that,
the
and that
business
helps the
community and
next time you
people.
need to negotiate, because they were happy to work with you the last
Right.
time. They'll be happy to work with you again.
it's
If
built
you
on-
leave,
on
leave with
respect.
butting heads,
That's right. It's based on respect and bringing
Exactly.
people together and not pushing people into corners, which seems to be the MO of the way government operates today. And so, I think, in fact, I know that only independent leadership is going to be able to solve the problems that we have. One, it will send a very strong message to the General Assembly that we're not going to do it the same way, that
All
you're going
right.
to have to play nice in the sandbox.
Yeah, well,
And
I think
secondly,
independent also says objective, and you
Right.
need to be objective. Well,
And
it's been a real
the
pleasure.
Senate says tie,
Yeah.
we get to break them. So.
Well, a real pleasure to
Thank
meet
you so much.
I have met Oz before.
Yeah,
and had
thank
as a
you,
guest,
Susan, for having
but
us both on.
It's been delightful,
Yeah.
and we wish you all the best. We very much appreciate your hard work.
Schedule an interview for November 7th, and we'll be happy to talk to you about victory.
You got
All
it.
right?
You got it. All right. Well, I want to give your website. It's Oz for Government CT.
Oz for OZFORGOV, not the whole number.
Exactly.
Yep.
.com. And I also want to thank the Connecticut Historical Society and see their website at chs.org. And this is Susan Patricelli-Regan thanking you for joining me today. And you can see all of our programs on www.ctvalleyviews.com.
Thank you, Susan, very
Thanks.
much.
You're more than
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for the
So we-
opportunity.
I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today.